Alright, so that's our first ending. It took us a pretty long time to get there because the pacing's a bit slow. Why don't we back up and go to the point of divergence right after we tried to melt open the door. Okay, so again, we have the options of going down the staircase, going along the ledge to the right, or fighting the guards. What if we go running along the ledge to our right instead, after the door yells for help? Go to page 91. To win the battle, you must know how many enemies you will face. You don't want to run down the icy staircase into clouds that could hide unknown dangers. You decide to take the ledge to the right. You leave the shrieking door far behind as you sprint along the ledge. Ahead of you is a dark corridor opening off the ledge. Beyond the corridor stand 2 orc guards with their backs to you. They are not yet aware of your presence. If you choose to try to avoid the guards and slip into the corridor, turn to page 96. If you want to try to trick the orc guards, turn to page 72. If you want to attack the guards while they're still unaware of you, turn to page 90. Let's just sneak by. You do not want to fight if you can avoid it. Moving quietly, you press close to the wall and edge your way up to the dark opening. So far, your luck is held. The orcs have not heard you. Wrapping yourself tightly in your elven cloak, you dart into the dark corridor. Please turn to page 42. Cautiously, you enter the dark passage. Your elven sight shows that no one is near. Sword drawn and ready for battle, you creep down the corridor. You travel for about 20 minutes and encounter nothing. Other dark and silent passages open off this main corridor. At last, the corridor opens out into a large stone room. 20 small cell-like units have been carved into the damp walls. Each little cell contains a tattered blanket and a grimy bowl. The openings to the cells are heavily barred. There are small doors near the stone floor. You wonder what unlucky creatures live in the tiny cells. You hear sounds coming from the corridor, but you cannot make out what they are. If you choose to investigate the sounds in the cells, turn to page 95. If you choose to run away, turn to page 99. Let's investigate. Pressed against the frosty stone wall, you move slowly down the corridor, listening intently. You hear blows, cries, and the rattle of chains. A rough voice growls, "Get up, lazy elf, or you'll be tonight's supper. All you do is cry for food and blankets, but you won't work for 'em." You hear more blows and cries of pain. More chains rattle and the footsteps draw closer. You edge forward until you see an ogre carrying a large sword and leading a ragged line of human, elf, and halfling prisoners. The dirty and exhausted prisoners are linked together by a chain that runs from one thin neck to another. You watch and shudder. You want to help the poor creatures, but if you get killed trying to help the prisoners, you will fail the people of your village. It is a hard decision to make. The ogre stands with its back to you. It screams at the pathetic line of prisoners. "Hurry up! I want dinner!" You back up and hide behind a boulder until the ogre and its prisoners pass. If you choose to run away down the other corridor, turn to page 129. If you want to try to fool the ogre, turn to page 23. If you choose to attack the ogre, turn to page 79. Guess we'll run away again. We're good at that. You may find some answers down this corridor. You'll have to be very cautious because where there is activity, there is also danger. You tiptoe along the corridor with your sword drawn, pressing close to the walls, alert for danger. You creep through the corridor until you are just at the edge of a brightly lit opening. Noise is coming from just inside. Your curiosity overcomes caution. Slipping up to the doorway, you peek in. Bright light streams down from the dome of Shanafria, enabling you to see the strange sight below. Hundreds of elves, halflings, and humans are using tools and working in small groups. They are picking and carving their way into the mountain. Enormous pillars of dirt, boulders, and rocks litter the landscape. The prisoners work in a mechanical way, not noticing the blows of the monster guards. Now you know what has happened to all the missing travelers. They are being used as slave labor for some kind of mining. You hear a loud cry. Monsters come running from all over the area. You see furious digging. The prisoners are beaten and threatened until they dig faster. Dirt and rock fly everywhere. Finally, you see brilliance sparkling in the earth. A large ogre bends down and picks up a handful of something and places it in a large pouch. It searches the dirt to make sure that everything has been found, then yells at the prisoners to get back to work. Then the ogre calls 2 goblins over to it and gives them the pouch. The goblins rush away. These actions puzzle you. Not once did the prisoners fight their captors, even though they carry tools which could have been used as weapons, and there are far more prisoners than there are guards. All the prisoners are skinny and seem depressed. Why don't they fight? Suddenly, you notice that the goblins sent away by the ogre are climbing the ledge that leads directly to where you are hiding. If they continue on this path, they will find you. If you try to find another hiding place and wait for the goblins to pass, turn to page 136. If you attack the goblins to find out what is in the pouch, turn to page 133. Let's attack. Your curiosity is aroused. You must find out what those monsters are mining. The mining seems to be the reason people have been captured. You hide behind a rock and wait. The goblins appear at the doorway. "Hold it, Cray. Let me catch my breath. That climb gets tougher every day," says one goblin. "If you didn't eat so many elves, you wouldn't get so fat and out of shape, Porg," says Cray. The goblin's name is Porg? "This bunch should last a while," says Porg, as it waddles down the corridor. They pass the rock where you are hiding. When they disappear into the gloom of the corridor, you spring into action. With 2 swift blows, you kill both goblins. Bending over their fallen bodies, you pick up the leather pouch. Returning to the lighted cave opening, you shake out the contents of the leather pouch. Cool and bright, like a handful of stars, you hold a fistful of diamonds. Now you know the secret of Shanafria. Should you return to the caravan and try to stir the prisoners into revolt? The odds are not good. You could go down the staircase and find a way out. Well, do we try to get the prisoners to revolt, or do we go back down the staircase? Let's go back down the staircase. Okay, so we already know that going down the staircase leads to that encounter with the 2 orcs. So if we attack the orcs, that takes us to page 41. And this time, instead of going back up the staircase like an idiot, let's go down the staircase away from the monsters. That takes us to 76. And so I've ended up where we were before, just with a more roundabout way of doing it. This is a somewhat linear kind of game book, and instead of having a whole bunch of stories that branch off in all different directions, it's a bit more like there's one story being told, and there are a few choices and sort of alternate options to get to the same conclusion. You continue down the staircase and enter the cloud lair. You meet no more orcs. You are very cold. Only a little light manages to flicker through the clouds. The footing is dangerous, and the staircase seems to be endless. Even with your elven sight, you have a hard time seeing through the cold mist. Occasionally, you catch glimpses of dark openings in the rock. Ledges circle the walls on 4 different levels. Sometimes you see figures moving on the ledges, but you cannot make out who or what they are. Beneath you, on the cavern floor, giant mushrooms rise eerily through the mist. In some places, huge clumps of the mushrooms have sprouted, making the cavern look like a nightmare forest. A broad silver river slithers across the cavern floor. Huge chunks of ice spin end over end in its powerful current. Even from here, you can hear the river's roar. One feature of the spectacular landscape stands out above the rest. In the center of the cavern is an enormous ice pillar. It rises from the floor of the cavern and soars into the clouds. You try to estimate how big it is. It would take at least 20 elves holding hands just to encircle the base. You can just barely see the end of the staircase. It looks like a path leads from it to the mushroom forest, the river, and the mysterious ice pillar beyond. To your right, there is a ledge leading around the side of the mountain. A dark opening is visible at the end of the ledge. If you choose to follow the staircase, turn to page 43. If you choose to follow the ledge and enter the dark opening, turn to page 42. Wait, what? 42? We already took that path. So, I think that there might be a bit of a typo in this book, because if you take 42, then you take, you go through that path with the ogre and the cells that we already did, and from there you can then go down the staircase and then go into the 42 path again. So you can get stuck in a permanent loop if you're not careful. So let's not do that, and let's go to page 43. You can just see the bottom of the steps when you hear and feel great thudding footsteps. Soon you see a 15-foot frost giant striding toward you through the mushroom forest. Its ice-blue body is heavily muscled and covered with silver and leather armor. A shaggy mane of blonde hair tumbles over its shoulders. Hawk-like amber eyes peer out from beneath frosty eyebrows. A blonde mustache flows into the beard that nearly covers its broad chest. Your knees start to shake. Pressing against the icy wall, you hope it won't see you. The giant slashes its way through the mushroom forest with an enormous double-edged battle axe. Suddenly, you realize it's the same frost giant you met on the ledge outside. You wonder why the ground is shaking. The frost giant is a huge monster, but not large enough to make the ground shake under its feet. Suddenly, the giant turns and points a huge stubby finger upward. "Go home! I command it! Never have I met such a dumb dragon! Go home now!" A young white dragon walks behind the giant. It's Fang. Fang doesn't listen to the giant's command. Instead, it walks forward and stretches out on the ground, laying its scaly head across the giant's feet. Whimpering softly, Fang looks at its master with huge, sad eyes. The giant is not pleased. "Get up, you dumb dragon! Stop following me! You're the most useless excuse for a guard dragon I've ever seen. Stop that whimpering. I can't stand it. I wonder how many orcs I could get for you on a trade-in." The giant kicks the dragon. Fang yips and yelps even louder, making the giant even more angry. Reaching down, it grabs the sniveling, whimpering Fang by the scruff of its neck. I didn't know the dragons had scruffs. And tries to make it stand. Instead, Fang goes limp and collapses like a wet noodle. As the giant reaches for its club, Fang rolls over on its back. All four sharply clawed feet wave in the air. Fang cries loudly. Finally, the giant loses its patience and gives Fang a whack with the club. Fang springs angrily to its feet and blasts a spray of frost directly at the giant. The frost cone covers the giant with ice from head to toe. Attacking a frost giant with frost is like pouring water on a duck. It's useless and only makes the giant angrier. It smacks Fang with the club and kicks it on its scaly rump. "Get home, or no young maidens for dinner." The last threat seems to affect the dragon. After a few half-hearted frosty bellows, it flaps its great wings and lurches clumsily upward. Fang flies away, heading in the direction of the ice pillar. You wonder if this is where the giant and the dragon live, and resolve to be very careful if you travel that way. The giant turns around and starts walking toward the staircase. You were so interested in watching the giant and dragon that you foolishly forgot your own safety. You look around frantically for a place to hide. You see nothing but the stairs, the ledge behind you, and some strange clumps of blue-white ice against the wall. You're trying to figure out what to do when you hear a tiny, crackly voice say, "Elf, over here, hide thyself behind us." The voice comes from the strange ice clumps. At any moment, the giant will see you. You have several choices. If you choose to run away, turn to page 100. If you choose to hide behind the ice clumps, turn to page 49. If you choose to fight the giant, turn to page 81. If you choose to talk to the giant, turn to page 97. If you choose to surrender to the giant, turn to page 92. So we got 5 choices. I think we should hide behind the ice clumps. That kind of seems like the smart thing to do. You decide to trust the tiny voices and take their offer of help. One of the voices crackles again. "Over here. Duck down behind the ice." You slide between the ice clumps and flatten yourself on the ground behind them. Only seconds later, the giant stomps up the staircase past you. You carefully stand up and look around, trying to find who saved you. You see nothing but the strange clumps of ice. "Where are you?" you whisper. "We are here," answer many tiny voices. You still can see nothing. But then the strange clumps of ice begin to move. They glide slowly toward you until you are ringed by the strange clumps. They look like ice, but they talk and move. What can they be? As if reading your mind, the largest knob glides forward, stops directly in front of you, and says, "We are the Guardians. We have been the keepers of Shanafria from all time. We are the elements of the earth. We are here to protect and use wisely the earth and fires your people call diamonds." The Guardian continues his story. "We hollowed out the mountain and built the great dome and the ice pillar. For centuries we were alone. building, mining, and existing peacefully with nature. Then the monsters came. At first, only a few. Then more and more. They brought death and destruction to our peaceful mountain. They care not for the beauty of the earth and fires. They only collect them out of their foul greed. They are not satisfied with a portion of the earth and fires. They want all Shanafria holds. To accomplish this, they ambush helpless travelers on the mountain passes and force them to rip our mountain to pieces, mining for the earth and fires. There is only one way to stop the monsters from destroying our mountain and taking more helpless travelers prisoner. We must destroy Shanafria and begin again. If thee are willing to help us, we will help thee. If thee refuse, thy chances of escaping harm are slim. I'm not sure their grammar's right. You realize the Guardians are your best chance for survival. Guardians, I will gladly help you. Our goals are almost the same. Please tell me how to accomplish your mission. The way is difficult and dangerous, says the largest Guardian. It will require bravery. Thee may not survive. A chill of fear runs down your spine, but you do not speak. The Guardian continues. The pillar is the key. Thee must bring it down. It should be thou must bring it down. Once it falls, the entire mountain will collapse, burying all the evil beneath it. After a time of healing, we will once again rebuild the mountain and live in peace once more. We have used our mirror of souls to read thy thoughts. We know thee to be both honorable and trustworthy. That is why we will trust thee with the mirror of souls, our most precious possession. You hear a crackling sound, and part of the Guardian shatters and falls to the frozen ground. Embedded in its body is an enormous diamond as large as your head. A ray of sun filters down from the dome and is caught by the huge gem. The light divides into 1,000,000 bright beams so brilliant that you stare at the diamond as though hypnotized. This is the mirror of souls of Shanafria, the most beautiful of all earth and fires. With it, we can look into the hearts and souls of others to see their strengths and weaknesses. We also use it to call other earth and fires to the surface. Thou must find thy way through the mushroom forest, across the wide silver river, and into the ice cavern by the side of the whirlpool. Travel in darkness, and try to avoid the many wandering monsters. When dawn comes, thou must use the mirror of souls to catch the rays of the sun. Direct the beam of light at the ice pillar. If thou canst hold it long enough, the ice pillar will melt and the dome will collapse. Remain in the cavern during this time, and thou wilt be safe. One thing thou must promise us. Once thou hast destroyed the dome, thou must leave the mirror of souls in the cavern. It must remain in Shanafria. Thou mayst then leave with our blessing and the knowledge that thou hast helped to destroy a reign of evil. Guard the mirror of souls with thy life. Thou art now the last guardian, the last hope. With fumbling fingers, you reach for the gem. It is cold and heavy in your hands. With great care, you wrap it in a soft blanket and tuck it away in your backpack. You have my word, you promise. I will do my best. If I rid Shanafria of evil, I will also save my own people. Farewell, guardians. Taking a few steps, you turn around to wave goodbye, but all you see is the staircase, the ice wall, and a few clumps of ice. The mirror of souls feels heavy on your back. A whispered voice says, Goodbye, young elf. May thee have good luck. The mist grows heavy with the fall of night. You find the foot of the mountain and locate a dark opening in the rock. Looking inside, you see nothing, but hear sounds coming from the rear of the cave. Discovering a tunnel leading from the cave, you follow the sounds. You creep down the tunnel for a long time and find yourself at the entrance of a huge room. Tied up in the room are many elves, halflings, and humans, all of whom look angry and unhappy. Your heart jumps with excitement when you recognize 3 elves from your village. They were among the last party to try to reach the land beyond the mountains. If you could free the prisoners, you would have help with your mission. It will not be easy. Squatting around a meager fire are 4 goblins cooking their dinner. Their short swords lie within easy reach. Well, this bunch should last a while, rasps one goblin. Maybe. They don't last long down here, says another. You think it's the cold and dark that kills them off? No, it's the rotten food, says the third goblin. You draw the sword of the magus and leap into the circle of prisoners and goblins. The magic blade hums and crackles. The astonished goblins look up. Their hands and faces are still smeared with grease from their meal. They stumble to their feet in confusion and grope for their weapons. Not giving the goblins a chance to arm themselves, you swing the magic blade. 2 goblins are struck down almost immediately. The remaining 2 reach for their swords, but their shoddy blades are much shorter than the sword of the magus. Metal clashes on metal, and one goblin's blade breaks off at the hilt. Before it can grab another weapon, you run it through. The last goblin stares at its fallen friend. Pulling its green lips back in a snarl of hatred, it turns and runs out of the room, into the dark tunnel leading into the mountain. The goblin disappears quickly. You decide not to follow, but to rescue the prisoners instead. Quickly, you use the sword of the magus to cut the ropes that bind the prisoners. They are overjoyed to be rescued and ask you many questions. Speaking quickly, you tell them all you know. We must destroy this evil. Until we do, innocent elves, humans, and halflings will continue to be seized by the monsters to work in the mines. We must stop them. If we decided not to try and stop them and simply ran away, we would not be safe for long. Whether we want to or not, we must do our best to destroy Shanafria as the Guardians ask. We cannot help those already trapped in the mountain. It is more important to save our loved ones in the villages around Shanafria. None of you is obligated to go on the Guardian's mission with me. You are free to try to leave the mountain. Speak now if you wish to leave. The firelight shines on the faces of the rescued prisoners. One of the elves from your village, named Desval, steps forward. Landon, you can count on us. We've had some dreadful times since we were captured. We know what will happen if the evil in the mountain is not stopped. We're with you. Thank you, Desval. Come then, this place is dangerous. We must leave quickly. Let's equip ourselves as best we can. You search the goblins. In addition to their swords, you find daggers, an axe, and a spiked club. You put your own dagger and axe in the pile of weapons and distribute them to the group. Worried that the goblin who escaped may return with reinforcements, you urge everyone to hurry. Your party files silently out of the room with you in the lead. You reach the entrance to the cave and look out. Night has fallen. The dome of Shanafria is hidden by clouds. Although the mushroom forest blocks the river from your view, you can still hear its powerful roar. Stay together, you order. If we are separated, we may never find each other. Be careful and be quiet. You and your party enter the mushroom forest. Some of the mushrooms are normal size, but most tower above your head. Some are as big and flat as tables. Sometimes you have to climb over great piles of dead mushroom stalks that lie like fallen tree trunks. Only your keen elven sight allows you to pick your way through the misty forest. Near the edge of the forest, Desval clutches your arm. Look over there, Landon. Did you see it? You look in the direction Desval pointed, but you see nothing. It was there, a large animal lying on top of that mushroom, stammers Desval. It's not there now. Maybe you saw a shadow, you suggest. No, I tell you, I did see an animal. It was looking directly at me. 1 minute it was there, and then it was gone, exclaims Desval. The others in your party cluster around you. I see it, says a halfling, pointing to your left. You turn and see a large cat-like animal lounging on top of a mushroom. As you start toward it, it vanishes before your eyes. There's a gasp of fear and wonder from your party. There, look at it. It's a Blink-Lynx, cries Desval. The animal appears in front of you, lying lazily on top of a large mushroom. The Blink-Lynx begins to groom his silvery gold spotted pelt as your party draws closer. You draw your weapons, ready to attack. The lynx doesn't react. He simply yawns and continues to groom his fur. However, his brilliant golden eyes never leave you. You look a bit silly, you know, says the lynx. I'm not the least bit hungry. Why don't you put away your weapons? However, if you're hungry and plan on eating me, then I'm afraid I must decline the honor. The lynx blinks out and disappears. No, we don't want to eat you. We just want to get across the river. Please come back, you yell. The lynx blinks back and says, In that case, maybe I'll stick around. This could be quite entertaining. He stretches lazily on the mushroom cap, then leaps to the ground beside you. Gets rather boring around here. There's absolutely no one around to talk to except those mangy monsters. I'd have great fun with them, blinking in and out. Drives them crazy. But you know, even that gets old after a while. Who are you, and what are you doing here? You ask the giant cat. Silly elf. Anyone can see I'm a nobly handsome Blink-Lynx in the prime of my life. My name's Nigel. Believe me, I should be anywhere but here. You've heard that curiosity killed the cat? Unfortunately, that goes for Blink-Lynxes too, even smart ones like myself. One day, I was out strolling in the mountains when I came across an orc. Now, orcs taste perfectly foul. Filthy personal habits, you know. I could never lower myself to eat one. But it is great fun leaping about, roaring and frightening them after death. Orcs are so entertaining. They have absolutely no sense of humor. Only this time, it didn't quite work out the way I'd planned. I followed the orc into an ice cave. Well, the next thing I knew, I was sliding down an ice chute. My fur got all messed up. I ended up by an enchanted ice door that said to me, "What's the matter, kitten? You lost your mittens? Now don't begin to cry." Then that wretched door laughed at me. I admit I might have been a bit flustered, but I certainly wasn't crying. Finally, the door got tired of teasing me and opened, saying, "Run along, little kitten. Try to find your mittens in here." The lynx continues his tale. "It's terrible being in here. It's full of monsters. There are elves, halflings, and humans here too. But after a week, they'd act like a bunch of zombies." "I'd give anything for a nice, juicy rabbit," Nigel says wistfully. "If I ever get out of here, I'm going to have to wash my mouth out with soap for a week to get rid of the taste of monsters and mushrooms." Nigel blinks in and out nervously and says, "I'm sure there's a way out of here, if only we can get across that river. If I help you, will you take me along?" You answer Nigel quickly before he disappears again. "I'm sure you'll be a great help to our party, Nigel. Tell me, do you know how the monsters get across the river?" "There's a guarded bridge," he replies. "You have to know all sorts of complicated passwords. The monsters examine everyone very carefully. No prisoners are allowed to cross the river." Why do the monsters guard it so heavily, you ask? "It's because of all those silly diamonds in the ice pillar," the lynx says. "The monsters store all the diamonds that the prisoners mine at the base of the ice pillar. There are simply heaps of them. I can't for the life of me understand all the fuss about diamonds. After all, you can't eat them." "How many monsters guard the bridge and the ice pillar at night?" you ask. "Except for the monsters guarding the prisoners. Every monster in the mountain is over there at night. There's also a white god dragon. I don't think it ever sleeps. I just know there has to be a way across the river. But that's your job. You figure it out." "Let's all go to the river and have a look," you say. "Then we'll try to figure out a way to cross it." Walking in single file, you head toward the river. The sound of rushing water grows louder as you push your way through the mushroom forest. Standing on the bank of the river, you watch the murky water churn past. Large chunks of ice spin and bob around in the current. You talk with your friends about the best way to get across the river. If you choose to try to swim across the river, turn to page 98. If you choose to leap from ice floe to ice floe until you get to the other side, turn to page 101. If you choose to build a raft from the mushroom stalks and float across the river, turn to page 30. Mushroom raft it is. Your party spreads out through the forest looking for dead mushroom stalks. You drag the stalks back to the river's edge. Collecting leather vests from everyone in the party wearing one, you carefully slice the vests into strips, and then you construct a crude raft by weaving the leather strips, your rope, and the tough mushroom stalks together. You hack down several live mushrooms to complete the raft and to use as oars for the dangerous crossing. At last, your raft is ready. Everyone gets aboard. Nigel is last, grinning nervously as he tests the footing on the floor of the raft. "Doesn't leak, does it? I can't stand wet paws, you know. Is it safe? How do I know we won't sink? Dear, oh dear. Maybe I should just stay on dry land." Nigel worries and frets until finally you pull a large mushroom cap from the raft. "Here, sit in this. It'll keep your fur nice and dry." Nigel steps gingerly into the mushroom cap, twitching his whiskers nervously. Before the lynx can change his mind, you push the raft away from the bank. The wild current grabs the raft and whirls it downstream. Using the mushroom stems as oars, you fight the current and the ice floes. Slowly, you edge your way across the river. The other shore is within sight when a gigantic ice floe appears out of the gloom, headed directly for the raft. You and your companions row as fast as you can. The ice floe catches the edge of your raft and tilts one corner up until all of you are clinging to the very edge of the raft. Grinding, tearing, and howling noises fill the air. With a body-jarring thump, the raft crashes back down in the water. As the ice floes whirl wildly past, you discover that 2 of the mushroom stalks at the end of the raft are gone. You all paddle wildly to get the party to shore before the raft can sink beneath the icy waters. Making a quick head count, you see that everyone is safe and accounted for, except Nigel. It must have been he who howled. When the raft tilted, the mushroom cap with the lynx inside must have slid off into the waters. As if in answer to your unspoken question, a great unhappy yowling comes out of the darkness from the other bank. You row as fast as you can toward the sound. The raft strikes something hard and wedges between 2 rocks. Scrambling off the half-submerged raft, meets your eyes. You start to laugh uncontrollably. Soon humans, halflings, and elves are all roaring with laughter at the sight of the wet and bedraggled lynx. Nigel still sits in the mushroom cap, but is most definitely not happy. I don't see anything funny, sniffs Nigel. Some people just don't like heights, and some ignorant souls are even afraid of cats. I simply don't like water. It's perfectly understandable. Water drips from his nose, ears, and body, forming a large puddle inside the mushroom cap. Nigel steps out of the soggy cap, shaking each foot violently. He then proceeds to lick himself dry. You walk to a large rock by the edge of the shore and peer over it to scout out the territory. What you see makes you freeze with fright. A vast plain stretches before you. A few mushrooms still stand, but most have been chopped down and used for the fires that dot the plain as far as you can see. Camped around the fires are scores of goblins, ogres, and orcs, gobbling their evening meal. Landon, I don't think we stand a chance of getting by them, whispers one of the halflings. There's too many monsters. One of the humans nervously fingers his knife and says, We'll never get through that camp. Let's leave now before they find us. There's got to be another way. As you are discussing your situation, loud cheering and yelling breaks out from the monster camp. Peeking over the rock again, you see a terrible sight. A feeble old halfling has been pushed into a clearing in the camp. Shaking with exhaustion and fear, he stands surrounded by the mocking monsters. Some are staring upward and shouting, Here, Fang! Dinner time! Here, Fang! An orc tosses a spear to the halfling, and a goblin throws him an axe. They taunt him by yelling, Pick him up! Entertain us, you skinny runt! Let's have some action! The feeble halfling continues to stare at his feet rather than picking up the weapons. Slowly, he falls to the ground in a heap next to them. Bored, some of the monsters start to pelt the unfortunate prisoner with small rocks and bones. Get up! Cry the monsters. Fight for your life! Do you want to be Dragon Chow? A great wind stirs the air, and the flapping of huge wings drowns out any sound of the screaming monsters. The dragon is coming. If you choose to leap out and attempt to rescue the halfling, turn to page 143. If you choose not to rescue the halfling and just escape instead, turn to page 102. If you choose to push the raft back into the river and try to cross to the other side, turn to page 135. Let's try to cross to the other side. We can't help the halfling, and we can't finish our mission if we're dead, whispers one of the elves. Landon, let's get out of here. There has to be another way out. Sadly, you leave the halfling to his fate and hurriedly push the raft into the river. The raging current seizes it. Unfortunately, your earlier bout with the ice floe has damaged the raft. In the middle of the river, it starts to break apart and sink. Some of the party cling to parts of the raft and are whirled away into the darkness. Others decide to swim for shore. You struggle as the current carries you far away from your friends. The great weight of the Mirror of Souls keeps pulling you under the surface of the frigid waters. You know you won't survive for long. You should have left the Mirror of Souls in the mountain, as the guardians told you. Nigel watches from the bank. Well, they would have waited a little longer. I'm sure they could have made it. Well, at least I'm across. I just know I'm clever enough to find a way out of this terrible place. Looking at the empty river, Nigel heaves a great sad sigh and settles down to lick the last of the river water from his coat. You have reached the end of this adventure. Go back to the beginning for another adventure. That did not go well. But since we're so far along, I think we'll just go back and try one of the other options. So, shall we try to save the halfling, or shall we just try and escape? What happens if you try to save the halfling? Your party votes to try to rescue the helpless halfling. The lynx refuses to help, saying, I see quite enough of those monsters without going into the middle of them. No, thank you very much, but I'll stay right here. Do let me know how everything turns out. With that, he begins to groom his fur and pointedly ignores all of you as you creep over the bank and edge your way to the monster's camp. You move very quietly, dodging like shadows from rock to rock. Suddenly, you are discovered and surrounded by monsters. Hey, look, we got visitors, shouts an orc. Rough hands grab at you and wrench you from your hiding place. You are thrown from orc to orc. The world spins crazily. Hideous visions whirl by, campfires, leering monsters, icy ground, the ice pillar ringed by piles of flashing diamonds, Fang, the white dragon. In the midst of a shout of laughter, you are dumped beside the sad halfling. Two of your companions are tossed in next to you. Fang is almost upon you. Pulling out your weapons, you stagger to your feet, determined to fight. Fang's huge head snakes out. You swing the sword of the Magus at its neck, but your blade just bounces off the armor-like scales. Fang snatches you in its claws. Slowly, beating the air with its wings to gain altitude, the dragon rises. As you rise steadily higher, you see below the fabulous diamonds heaped at the base of the ice pillar. You see your friends being bound and led away by the monsters. You kick and flail at Fang helplessly. It's no use. Fang doesn't even feel your blows. Unless you can think of some way to escape, you will soon be a dragon's dinner. You have reached the end of this adventure. Go back to the beginning for another adventure. I guess that sometimes discretion is the better part of valor. Okay, so that leaves only one option. We'll just have to try to escape. You decide that there is no way you can rescue the halfling. The attempt would only cause your own deaths. The dragon slowly flaps its way to the ground. More monsters crowd their way to the pillar to watch. They call out, some cheering the dragon on, others jeering at the halfling to fight. You creep over the edge of the icy bank and slip away from the camp. There isn't much chance of the monsters spotting you. All eyes are on the hapless halfling. You hear the insane screeching as the monsters bet against each other. You see Fang lumbering into the sky with the halfling clutched in its claws. You dare not stop to watch. The monsters will be returning to their dinners, and you could be caught. You and your small party race across the enemy camp, dodging from one rock or mushroom clump to the next. Luck stays with you, and you succeed in slipping off into the bleak darkness that stretches beyond the monster camp. Even though you are now out of sight of the camp, fear keeps you moving. At last you collapse with exhaustion. You can run no farther. Heaving great ragged breaths, humans, halflings, and elves lie together on the frozen ground until their energy returns. For once, the lynx is doing something of value. He scouts ahead, looking for new dangers that may lie in your path. You gather around the trunk of a giant mushroom, resting and sharing your small supply of food. Suddenly, a shadowy creature leaps into your midst. Drawing your weapons, you leap to your feet. Really? Says Nigel. Not a very warm welcome for a brave scout. Be careful with those beastly blades. You could rumple my fur. With a glad sigh of relief, you put your weapons away and gather around the lynx to hear what he's discovered. The land is simply littered with monsters, says Nigel. They all speak of a great raid to take place tomorrow. The monsters are no longer content with small amounts of gems. They want all the diamonds, and they want them now. From what I can figure out, the monsters plan on attacking 3 of the closest towns. They will capture all the village inhabitants. All those who are able will be forced to mine the diamonds. Those who are weak will be sport for the monsters' amusement, or dinner for Fang. The towns in danger are Polycanthus to the north, Aurelia to the east, and Cambria to the south. Cries of rage and grief break out as members of the party hear the names of their villages. Your heart grows heavy when you hear the name Aurelia, Jewel of the Mountains, your home. To avoid the death and destruction of all we hold dear, you say, we must act quickly. We must not fail. There are cries of approval from the other members of your party. You hurry off, anxious to fulfill your mission. The rest of the night passes like a nightmare. With the aid of the lynx as a scout, your elven sight, and the light from the sword of the Magus, you thread your way through the mass of sleeping monsters. Monsters of every description lie on the ground in snorting, muttering heaps. Shortly before dawn, you and your party spot the cavern the Guardians told you about. It will be difficult to reach. The cavern is no more than a deep hole in the side of Shanafria. It is located directly above the far edge of a whirlpool. The entire river of melting ice and snow drains into the seething pool. It has such a terrible suction that even the largest ice floes are sucked in by the current. Grinding against each other with terrible groaning noises, they whirl and spin in ever smaller circles. Finally, they are swallowed up by the yawning black eye of the whirlpool. To fall into the river would mean certain death. Looking closely, you can see a narrow trail of brittle rock and ice clinging to the side of the mountain that leads from the plain to the surface of the cavern. If you are careful and lucky, you should be able to reach the cavern before morning. With Nigel in the lead, you creep carefully along the trail. Your faces press against the rough rock, and your fingers strain for handholds. As you scrape your painful way along the ledge, it becomes more and more difficult to travel. A fine mist rises from the whirlpool and coats the trail with a slippery dew. Suddenly, there is a scream of terror. A human, heavier than the other members of the party, loses his grip and plunges into the river below. He is lost forever. The sure-footed lynx has found shelter in the cavern. "I say, come along. Why are you lazing about on that ledge? It's much more cozy in here." Nigel's words give you a sudden surge of energy. You force yourself along the last few feet of the icy ledge and fall exhausted onto the floor of the cavern. Leaning over, you reach out to pull the rest of the party to safety. You have reached the cavern in time. You cannot see the ice dome through the cloud layer, but the clouds glow with the pearly pink of early dawn. You can see the entire plain below. Orcs and goblins scurry around, gathering up weapons and arming themselves for battle. Quickly, they put out the last few fires still burning. It is a frightening sight. If you do not succeed in stopping the monsters now, your loved ones will be lost. A bright ray of sunlight pierces the cloud cover and strikes deep within the cavern. Now it is obvious why the Guardians directed you to this spot. It is one of the few places under the dome where sunlight can penetrate the dense clouds. Acting quickly, you place your backpack on the ground and gently lift out the Mirror of Souls. Placing it so that it catches the rays of sunlight, you focus the brightest beam of light on the center of the ice pillar. Members of your party gather rocks to make a secure base so the mirror will stand alone, even if you're attacked. Watching anxiously, you stand at the edge of the cavern. At first, nothing seems to be happening. Then a muttering can be heard. It grows louder and louder. The monsters on the plain look around in confusion. They don't understand what is happening. At last, hearing shouts from their friends camped closer to the pillar, they look up. The monsters have followed the brilliant beam of light back to the cavern where you stand. A loud shout goes up as you are spotted by the monsters. They do not yet understand what the beam of light is or what it is doing. They do understand that you are somewhere you shouldn't be. Raising their weapons high, several groups of monsters scream threats and start toward you. You glance nervously toward the ice pillar. You cannot tell if the beam is working or not. A tremendous roar goes up as the frost giant slides down the pillar and calls the army of monsters. You're too far away to hear what he's saying. However, you can see from the giant's frantic gestures that it understands what you are trying to do. A great cry goes up from the monsters. They move in a mass toward the cavern. A sea of monsters surges toward you, intent on stopping you from completing your mission. If the beam does not do its job, you will only be able to hold the monsters off for a short time. There are only a handful of you against thousands of them. Spears hurled by the first wave of the mob clatter against the mountain's walls. The only approach to the cavern is the trail by which you came. The monsters cannot attack directly because the whirlpool roars below the cave. They are too heavy to climb the fragile ledge. Even if they could, they would be targets for everything you could throw from the cave. So far, your perfect position has saved you. But more and more spears and arrows are bouncing all around you. Every moment is precious. Every second that the beam can do its work must be gained. You cannot see any changes yet, but you do think you hear a faint cracking sound. There's no doubt about it now. You do hear a cracking, rumbling sound. The monsters hear it too and turn toward the pillar. They begin screaming and pointing upward. Reflected light is bouncing off the pillar and is lighting up the clouds dramatically. They boil violently, charged with a strange energy. Within the dome, the sky churns. All at once, you hear a sharp crack. An intense flash of lightning rips through the clouds and strikes the plain in the middle of the monster mob. The monsters panic and run back and forth, crashing into each other. There is no escape for them. An increasing number of lightning bolts tear the sky, stabbing into the plain, leaving death and destruction in their wake. You and your party cower against the far wall of the cave. You are safe from the lightning, but it is a terrifying sight to behold. Thunder crashes and echoes back and forth inside the walls of the mountain. The sounds of shrieking from the plain bring you once more to the edge of the cave. "Look, Landon!" cries Desval, clutching your arm tightly and pointing at the river. When you climbed the ledge to the cave, the river and whirlpool were 20 feet below. Now the river is swollen with huge chunks of ice that have fallen from the pillar. The ice bobs up and down in the murky water that now laps at the edge of the cave. In its rapid rise, the river has swept many monsters into its flow. They struggle helplessly for a few minutes, then sink beneath the churning waters. Other monsters, still struggling, are sucked into the raging whirlpool. A chill runs down your spine as you realize that you may soon be in the river. The frigid waters have now spilled over the edge of the cave and are rushing over the floor. The cave will flood in a few minutes, drawing all of you and the diamond into the turbulent waves. If you want to leap into the water and try to swim to safety, turn to page 40. If you want to leave the Mirror of Souls in place, crowd to the back of the cavern and wait out the flood, turn to page 137. If you want to remove the Mirror of Souls and hope that the waters go down, turn to page 115. You persuade your party to have faith in the Guardians. They directed me to this place. They surely knew what would happen. They didn't say it would be easy. If we succeed with our mission, we will save our loved ones. They are worth more than our lives. "Spike for yourself," the Lynx blurts out. "I don't think I agree with that. I'm pretty special. I deserve to live." "Be quiet, Lynx," says Desval. "Landon, you can count on us. Nigel, you're free to go your own way if you wish." The Lynx walks delicately over to the edge of the cavern where the water is washing across the floor. There doesn't seem to be much choice. "I can either stay here and drown slowly, or leap into that mess and drown quickly. I might as well stay here. This might just work out. Then I'd be a hero. If anyone deserves to be a hero, it's me." Ignoring the water lapping at your feet, everyone crowds around the Mirror of Souls. Even Nigel stops complaining. Dramatic changes are taking place. Before you, the clouds still roll in the sky. The thunder and lightning have gotten even worse. Great flashes of blinding light and booming blasts of thunder continue to echo from one side of the mountain to the other. Rain falls in thick sheets. You see great chunks of the collapsed pillar in the river. The freezing water slowly rises to knee level. Nigel has found a large boulder and perches hunched on top of it. His fur is ruffled angrily and his gold eyes shoot darts of displeasure at everyone. Staring intently into the pelting rain, you see a blurry form. The form moves closer. It's the frost giant. Drenched by the rain, it stands like a giant statue. It is gathering the monsters together and urging them forward. Soon a solid wall of monsters is moving shoulder to shoulder through the downpour toward you. You cannot fight such an attack. The only escape is the river, and that looks like certain death. Fear is on everyone's face. You look at each other in despair. The monsters draw ever closer. Soon they will reach you. The icy water now reaches your waist. The violent current tugs at you and draws you ever closer to the whirlpool. Suddenly, you hear a crash louder than any you've ever heard. It sounds like the world is ending. The noise thunders on and on without end. The air is choked with ice particles and dust. You can see nothing. You look down. Incredibly, the water is subsiding. It drains down to your knees, your ankles, the floor. It drains off rapidly, leaving the floor glistening with moistures. The Mirror of Souls lies on the floor, knocked off its base. Cautiously, not understanding what has happened, everyone, even Nigel, creeps to the edge of the cavern and looks out. Below you is a deep black hole swirling away beneath the mountain. It is the bed of the whirlpool, now empty of water. Stretching before you, as far as the eye can see, is a field of ice. Great, jagged chunks of ice cover what once was the interior of Shanafria. Everything, the pillar, the frost giant, the monsters, the river, probably even the guardians, is covered by the fallen dome. The stone walls of the mountain base hold the shattered dome like a great bowl holding ice chips. The brilliant sun shines down on the glittering ice. You've done it. The mission is a success. Your loved ones and your homes are saved. "See, I told you everything would be all right," says Nigel. Fresh air sweeps into the cavern. Desval grasps the Mirror of Souls to his chest. Let's leave. We've done what the Guardians wanted. We didn't get any diamonds for ourselves, but the Mirror of Souls is big enough for all of us. We should get some reward from all this struggle. We cannot do that, you say firmly. I promised the Guardians that we would leave the Mirror of Souls in the mountain. They couldn't have survived the fall of the dome. Why should you keep that promise now? Asks Desval. I say we keep it and get out of here. We can walk across the ice field, climb the mountain, and be home before dark. A promise is a promise, says one of the humans. Thanks to the Guardians, we fulfilled the mission and survived. I say we do what Landon says. Leave the Mirror of Souls here and leave by way of the Whirlpool Tunnel. Your party is undecided. Should you believe that the Guardians are dead, take the Mirror of Souls and break your promise? Or should you honor your promise regardless of the fate of the Guardians? And let's take it. You decide it would be foolish to honor a promise you made to the Guardians. After all, they couldn't have survived the falling dome. Packing the Mirror of Souls in your backpack, you lead your party across the glistening ice field. The footing on the ice is very treacherous. When you are almost halfway across the ice, a knob of ice pops up out of nowhere. You trip over it and fall into a deep ice pit. The sides are too steep and slippery to climb. You feel cold, but it doesn't really bother you. You start to feel sleepy, and your eyelids feel too heavy to stay open. Snuggling closer to the ice wall, you yawn sleepily and close your eyes. Dimly, you hear your friends calling your name, but you're too sleepy to answer. Out of nowhere, you hear a shivery, whispered voice say, "Thee failed to honor thy promise, Landon. Sleep now. Sleep forever." You have reached the end of this adventure. Go back to the beginning for another adventure. You don't mess with the Guardians. Okay, so if we had left the Mirror of Souls, what would have happened? I promised the Guardians that we would leave the Mirror of Souls in the mountain. Whether they live or not is not the question. I promised I would leave the diamond here. If I break my word, it doesn't matter if anyone else knows it. I'll know it. Your party grumbles a little, but no one disagrees with you. With great respect, you place the Mirror of Souls gently on the floor of the cave before you. After one last longing glance at its beautiful face, everyone files from the cavern. It is not as difficult to leave as it was to enter. Many large chunks of ice rest against the sides of the mountain wall. Nigel leaped down to the riverbed in graceful bounds, forgetting at once his dislike of getting wet. The rest of you carefully pick your way down to the edge of the empty whirlpool. Centuries of raging water and grinding ice have carved this huge funnel out of solid rock. It is hard to believe all the water is gone. Gingerly, you lower yourself into the pit. It is very dark. You open your backpack and pull out your torches and tinderbox and hand them to your friends. Very soon you are on your way, your path lit by smoking, flickering torches. You command the sound of the sword of the Magus to light, and its golden light adds to the torchlight. The dry bed of the whirlpool stretches before you. You are under Shanafria. Pools of water remind you that not long ago this dark tunnel was filled with raging waters. An unexpected trickle of water starts to flow down the tunnel. Slowly, the flow increases. The river could break through the tunnel and flood it once more. Everyone in your party is thinking the same thing. You rush through the tunnel as the flow of freezing water rapidly increases. A bend lies just ahead of you. As you turn the corner, a blast of cold air stuns you, and a clear light glares in your eyes. You must be close to the end of the tunnel. Below you lies a rock staircase, strewn with ice left by the swirling waters. Large lumps of ice and snow choke the opening. You stand at the opening, drinking in the sun and the fresh air. You feel safe and happy. Your mission has been a success. You're about to begin the long climb when you hear the tiny voice of one of the Guardians say, "Well done, Landon. We share thy joy. To reward thee and thy brave friends, please accept these tokens of our gratitude." One of the ice knobs, ringing the mouth of the riverbed, moves. There, shining in the snow, you see a mound of glittering diamonds, each one the size of a hen's egg. These are not ordinary diamonds. They possess special powers. When their owners hold them, they can look deep into the hearts of others. They will tell thee if the person is honorable and truthful. These are precious gifts. Use them well. Farewell, Landon. You have done us and your people a great service. Each of your party chooses a diamond. As you start down the icy staircase, you hear a tremendous roar. Large chunks of ice and torrents of water have burst through the tunnel and start to pour down the staircase. You leap for the safety of the snowy slopes. You make it! You and your party stand and watch the roaring waters as they rage past. The last entrance to Shanafria is now sealed. You make your way to the foot of Shanafria. Elves, halflings, and humans separate to make their way home. The parting makes you sad, but you know you will always keep the memories of your quest in your heart, even though you may never see your friends again. I better tag along with you, Landon, says Nigel. I wouldn't want you to see you get lost. After all, you never would have made it without me. You know, we could get one of Aurelia's goldsmiths to put this diamond on a chain for me to wear around me neck. This diamond is one of the few things I've seen that's good enough to be worn next to me handsome fur. Don't you agree? Still chattering happily to himself, Nigel trots briskly at your side as you and your fellow elves start the journey home. The end. Go back to the beginning and start the book again. Don't think I will right now. So that was Mountain of Mirrors. It's got lots of good writing for a novella, but as far as a game book goes, it's a little too long-paced. It would really help if there were more choices in there just to break up the flow of things, because as it is, it's kind of exhausting to read 20 pages at a time without any choices. But still a good read, and definitely one that I recommend on a cold winter day like today. So, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.